2020, the most unforgettable year that most of us would probably rather forget. A year in which we've all been forced to take a step back and really take stock of the important things in life. So, what better way to mark this than to sit around for the next hour or so and watch some random shite about Tottenham. Welcome to Spurswipe 2020.
His passion is very good. The football is very good.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the naming rights pending stadium. I'm proud to introduce the new face of Tottenham Hotspur, Jose Mourinho.
2020 could be seen as the start of a new era for Tottenham. A year in which Amazon posed the question, all or nothing. And without wanting to give too much away, I'm pretty sure we can guess what Tottenham answered. Nevertheless, it was set to be the first full season in the brand new stadium, under the new regime of Jose Mourinho and the little bloke that follows him around. And, what with it being January, the prospect of a few new signings at last. But, before we get onto that, matters on the pitch, where it looked like we were still getting the same old Spurs. In our first fixture of the calendar year, a trip to the somewhat form-bipolar Southampton beckoned. Going 1-0 down, courtesy of an annoyingly good goal from the "is he actually good or not? I can't tell really" Danny Ings, we went on to underwhelm superbly, and lost. There wasn't much else to report on this other than Jose Mourinho got himself booked.
Because I was rude, but I was rude to an idiot.
Oh, and Harry Kane had a goal disallowed shortly before suffering a potentially season-ending injury. Happy fucking New Year. With defeat and the obliteration of our club captain still fresh in the memory, the FA, in tandem with the club and the police, went on to announce that they found no evidence of any racially motivated abuse aimed at Chelsea defender Antonio Rudiger during December's fixture. And of course, a lot of people had a lot of opinions on the matter. So, how are you feeling about the news?
Yeah, it's great news. I knew we weren't racist. Chelsea are the racist ones. Yeah, it's a real victory for Spurs.
I mean, I'm not quite sure that's the point.
What are you on about?
We can all learn a lot from this situation with this young man here, this
Rudiger.
And if we can all learn a little more from this situation with little Rudiger.
But he plays for Chelsea.
The club he plays for isn't important. With the increasingly soulless and businesslike nature of Premier League football beginning to take its toll, let's take the time to reflect on a few magical moments of yesteryear. Football back in the good old days. Ricky Villa's goal against City. Gazza's free kick against the Scum. Ginola's goal against Barnsley. Jack Wilshere standing atop a bus in a bucket hat mugging us off before his own eventual slide into obscurity. Magic. With no VAR, unless you're playing in a stadium that can support VAR, of course, and free from the general anxiety caused by the week-by-week permutations of league football, it was time for the FA Cup.
And Tottenham in the white shirts kicks off.
A trip to Middlesbrough was in store for Spurs, and if we needed any reminding as to how fucking long it's been since we last won something, two of the key figures from that Carling Cup victory of 2008 were now in the Borough dugout. If some explanation for this absence of glory was required, this laboured and uninspired performance against a side languishing in the bottom half of the Championship went some way towards shining a light on that. We ended up drawing 1-1, with little to take from the game other than a replay in an already packed schedule, and the added bonus of zero momentum to carry into the next league fixture, whoever that was against. I haven't actually had a chance to check the fixtures, but I'm feeling a bit sick really. I mean, not nerves, excitement really, not sexual, but she said she'd be around here somewhere anyway, wearing a sexy red number to help me spot her, and I, for fuck's sake. Liverpool's impossibly terrifying form to this point had them firmly on course to make history on many fronts, and as a byproduct, probably win pretty much everything. Well, other than any affection from anyone outside of the red half of Liverpool, of course. With the pain of the Champions League final still firmly in mind for both players and fans, a little win against the dominant Scousers would have been a nice little fuck you. But going into a game against a side that at this stage had drawn only one league game all season and won all the rest isn't made any easier when you consider what Spurs were up against. Missing our captain and first choice keeper, our first choice left back is injured, and the rotation option seemingly despises the club as much as he loves a pint at the darts. Our superstar, record signing, central midfielder still isn't fit. The magician, lockpicker, maestro, whatever you want to call him, doesn't even want to pretend to be any sort of footballer anymore. The legs of one half of our ever-reliable, legendary centre-back pairing have actually walked themselves back to Ajax. And of course, our talismanic goal-ravenous sporting psychopath is out for the foreseeable future. Not to mention, when facing one of Europe's most ruthless forward lines, is the day that Jose decides to hand academy defender Japhet Tanganga his Premier League debut. All in all, you'd imagine we'd be pretty fucked. Bit of an anticlimax, but in reality we were actually alright. I mean, obviously we lost, but we didn't get battered, and were it not for a last minute miss from Lo Celso, we could have actually taken something from the game.
Well, we feel that a generous wage of £50,000 per week should be enough to convince you to make the move.
No.
OK, you've twisted my arm. £30,000 a week.
Pero eso es aún menos.
Well, there's clearly no bargaining with you. You can't say we haven't tried.
So, barring a miracle, Spurs' January transfer window looked to be lacking the marquee signing that we were perhaps hoping for, which seemed odd given that we were apparently on the verge of signing Dybala back in the summer. But nonetheless, the addition of the promising Steven Bergwijn, sealing the ever-improving Giovanni Lo Celso on a permanent transfer, and just having another bloke in Gedson Fernandes. We've had worse windows. There was just one final piece of January business that needed taking care of, but I'll leave this one in the capable hands of Brother Foynes, who bids a fond farewell to our mercurial midfield maestro, Christian Eriksen.
What I really like about new Spurs is that we used to be really shit at signing players in January, but now we're really bad at selling them as well. Christian Eriksen is still moping about the place, probably still wondering why he's not already playing in Real Madrid white or Barcelona red and blue, I think. Whoever gets you Christian Eriksen, and it's looking like Inter Milan at the moment, they don't really want this version of Christian Eriksen walking through their front door. And if they've been watching you for the last 6 months, misplacing 5 or 6 yard passes, and not really looking like your heart's in it, I'd be questioning whether or not it's worth spending £20 odd million now or waiting for free until the summer. At the moment, the way you're leaving sounds like some sort of threatening video message at the moment. It's not. It's just the way you're leaving. You know, you've not gone on strike. You've not spoken out against the club or the manager. You've not left by the back door. You're sort of just limping out the front door with a box in your hand like a banker in the recession. It's just a bit pathetic and a bit meek and a bit pointless. And I don't know, maybe that's perfectly Tottenham. I just feel a little bit cold about the entire thing. And maybe it's because I'm losing my hair in the exact same way and I'm never going to be able to afford the hair transplant that he did. but that's by the by. And I guess it's bye-bye, Christian.
Well, January certainly didn't do much to inspire a lot of confidence, and the knives are out for Jose. After years of being belittled by the surly Portuguese in press conferences, many members of the football writing press were feeling pretty vindicated by their early assertions that he was finished. Let's see how those held up after an early February visit from reigning champions Manchester City.
A large slice of artisan good luck, washed down with a pint of craft negativity at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this evening as Spurs ran out victors against a plucky Manchester City side who were unlucky not to come away with more. Chasing not only Liverpool, but also their fifth win in six, City's noble intentions were undone by a Jose Mourinho side that weren't here to play football. Some might attempt to make the case that a side bereft of confidence, missing several first-team players, may have to manage a clash against one of the most ferocious attacking sides in Europe as best they can. But whatever happened to just giving it a go? Mourinho, clearly resigned to having lost his infamous special one edge, was unwilling to go toe-to-toe with Guardiola and relied upon the luck of the draw. Firstly, a cynical attempt by Dele Alli to throw himself into the way of a potentially leg-breaking tackle from Raheem Sterling was thankfully noted as Mourinho black magic by the officials, who decided against the sending off. Shortly before half-time, clearly under instruction by Mourinho to prevent the opposition from scoring, Hugo Lloris saved a penalty from Ilkay Gundogan, only to be luckily adjudged of not having fouled Raheem Sterling after not fouling Raheem Sterling in the follow-up. With the sides level at the break, the early stages of the second half saw more luck come Mourinho's way, as City's Alexander Zinchenko saw red, following only his fifth yellow card of the afternoon, spelling the start of City's procession towards the ignominy of defeat. Spurs, luckily having identified a signing that could potentially help in such moments, got the rub of the green as debutant Steven Bergwijn's exquisite chest control and half volley from the edge of the box managed to rifle past Ederson in the City goal. Tottenham's reluctance to attack was further rewarded after a fortuitous passage of pressing play, cynically capitalising on City as they looked their most vulnerable, resulting in Heung-min Son slotting home a second for the home side, who went on to then take all 3 points. Was this victory deserved? No. Was this a Mourinho masterclass? Absolutely not. Are you proud of me, Dad? I mean, I know you wanted me to be a solicitor, but it just wasn't for me. Why can't you respect my decisions? I'm my own man after all.
Despite being told we weren't allowed to enjoy the win over City, spirits were running high at Tottenham, and we turned our attention back to the FA Cup in a home replay against Southampton, in what was seemingly about the 50th time the two sides had already met that season. Spurs dug deep to turn it around after a dodgy start, with Moura and Son's late goals continuing their march towards Wembley. Although at this stage we were probably talking more of a limp really. With Kane's absence, sole responsibility now pretty much rested on Son's shoulders to be the man to step up and make that difference for Spurs in the coming months. But I mean, when you look at it like that, what could possibly go wrong? As he so often has done in his absence, Sonny once again filled Big Daddy Kane's shoes with aplomb, bagging a winner at the death at Villa Park. Perhaps all hope was not lost ahead of that tricky tie against Leipzig in the Champions League. And so there it began. In the absence of Kane, Son went on to lead the line for the rest of the season, breaking all manner of goal-scoring records en route to the final, where he bagged a hat-trick against Bayern Munich, sealing a historic win for Spurs. And not to mention, avenging the heart-wrenching misery of the previous season's 23-second final. Glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur. And back in the real world, Son broke his arm against Aston Villa and was ruled out for the rest of the season, obviously. And then in our crucial first leg home tie against Leipzig in the Champions League, we lost. So, great.
See, it becomes very hard to figure out if you're actually alright or actually quite shit under a relatively new manager when half of your team isn't available. But it's safe to say that things got very shit for Spurs very quickly. A crushing defeat to a loathed rival and a chance to close the gap on the top four missed. A sucker punch from a plucky underdog that's breathing down your neck. Then, crashing out of the only cup competition you're still in with a potential chance of winning against a side destined for relegation who actually seemed to want to lose the game. By this point, Spurs football managed to be the only thing more pedestrian than Norwich city centre. Aha! Yeah, but anyway, we won't even go into the whole one of our players jumping into the stands for a tear-up part of this.
Injuries, erratic form, Mourinho's sideline antics, the players not really being in it anymore. Whatever it was, it felt like the image that we'd built up of Spurs over the past few years was now all just starting to drain away.
Pochettino had carved Spurs a new identity as a genuine contender. Belief, dogged resilience and passion. We were on the very cusp of the gloriest of glories. But now, before our very eyes, we were reverting back to banter, back to Rothelham Lolspur, back to, is 7th place good enough for Europe? How very apt then that this road should lead us to the jewel in the crown of the Pochettino era, the Champions League. The memory of our most unlikely journey to the previous season's final kept hope alive as we headed to Leipzig for a tricky away tie, with the Germans holding an away goal advantage. Could we do it? No, we couldn't. I mean, Mourinho just wins wherever he goes, doesn't he? But it seemed now like the one thing we were going to win under him was the accolade of being the first fucking team that doesn't actually win anything under him.
Game 7 match.
The whole project was careering towards a cliff edge.
Oh, that's way worse than last year.
And then, just like that, everything came to a halt.
Good evening. The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone.
Scientists have speculated that the current coronavirus outbreak in humans might have begun at a market in the city of Wuhan. One hypothesis is that the virus could have jumped from bats to pangolins to people, in turn causing a global health emergency.
They're fighting a war here and they're losing. The sheer numbers of people succumbing to the coronavirus is overwhelming every hospital in northern Italy.
And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do, either through the skin or in some other way. Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or...
The sheer reach and penetration of the coronavirus pandemic opened up a new front today, with more of the world's biggest sporting contests cancelled or postponed. That includes the English Premier League and the Champions League as well.
Without meaning to sound crass, the break was pretty well timed for Spurs fans, offering some respite from a truly wretched season. With matches cancelled for the foreseeable future, Tottenham wouldn't have been able to continue ruining supporters' lives by being the total embarrassment that they had been thus far for the majority of 2020. Wait, they did what?
I couldn't say yes, I couldn't say no. I love Spurs, I'd always love Spurs, but...
And so Tottenham's commitment to banter continued. But at least that's some sort of consistency, I guess. I mean, Serge Aurier, surely the only defender who could be caught out of position during a global lockdown. But in his defence, he'd clearly rather face the consequences of his actions than be caught with a trim as bad as Aubameyang's. In a way, that mentality has to be respected. The Tottenham right-back broke lockdown with such confidence and conviction that it wouldn't have surprised me to see him handed a job as a key government advisor. Serge Cummings. I'm not so sure about that one, but anyway. For all the good and the mostly bad of lockdown, there was just that small matter of an unfinished season that needed addressing. With the world in the throes of a deadly pandemic, society as we knew it was at a complete standstill. But through all the face masks, the Zoom quizzes, the baking, the art challenges, the week of house party being a thing, rainbow paintings in windows, an hour of exercise a day, queues outside of shops, you get the picture. One thing remained the same. Football's need to place itself above everything else. Despite the plethora of safety issues raised by leading virologists and other such Poindexters that have clearly never played the game, pesky supporters groups and trusts worried about the potential Pandora's box that football behind closed doors may spell for the game on a top-to-bottom basis going forwards, not to mention the actual footballers who made known their fears about their own and their families' health and safety. Pfft, snowflakes. Alas, football and money, money and football. The show must go on. Perhaps one of the most uncomfortable things to reconcile about all this is that the outbreak of coronavirus actually did Spurs a huge favour. Considering the last time we took to the field, our squad was so threadbare that we didn't have any strikers and even included what would appear to be some sort of Dickensian anti-hero. So the fact that we were able to kick off post-lockdown football against Manchester United with pretty much our strongest 11, just saying, worldwide devastation versus Spurs' best interests? No. Okay, well, despite a majestic opener from the lively Steven Bergwijn, and with Spurs looking fairly comfortable for large parts of the game, United obviously started to creep back into things. Ole's tactical masterstroke of bringing on the £89 million rated Paul Pogba surprisingly had an impact, and in a tale as old as time, United levelled the score via a dubious penalty. Still, not great, not a disaster. Good old Spurgatory, how we've missed you. The draw against United was followed by a nice little win over West Ham, and it seemed as though for just a second that Tottenham were in with an outside chance of Champions League qualification. Cue Sheffield United, a team who, despite having had an admirable return to the Premier League prior to lockdown, now seemingly couldn't buy a win. So without being too obvious about it, I think we all know what happens next.
Sheffield United?
With Dr. Tottenham's ability to cure pretty much anybody, it's a wonder that we haven't actually been roped in yet to try and work on the vaccine for COVID. Yeah. Anyway, scraping a win against Everton, then an uninspiring goalless draw against Bournemouth meant that we were pretty much ready for football to hurry up and fuck off again. Were it not for the prospect of an upcoming North London derby, the first in the brand new stadium, surely enough to fan the flames of excitement in even the most sceptical, behind closed doors or not. Things couldn't have been better for Spurs around the time of the last North London derby to be played at the old White Hart Lane. During the 16-17 season, many of us were witnessing the greatest football we'd ever seen played by a Spurs team. A side packed with homegrown youth and experienced top-class internationals at the peak of their powers. Oh, and Kevin Wimmer for some reason. All under the tutelage of an ever-growing Maurizio Pochettino. Hard as it was to let go of the old ground, the new stadium loomed over, quite literally, as a nod to the future, a promise of bigger and hopefully better things in store. What better way to mark this than a commanding performance over our once feared rivals? Sure, we'd arguably been the better side for a few years by this point, but still, the old enemy had a pesky habit of keeping themselves in contention and showing up when it mattered. But not on that day. A fitting goodbye to the old ground. Cut now to the 1920 season. Spurs on a worrying decline once again, with Arsenal seemingly rebuilding an apparently exciting new project with Mikel Arteta. The narrative would dictate that after our brief stint of being the dominant force in North London, we were now meeting in the middle. No man in their current side probably better personifies Arsenal than Alexander Lacazette. An almost unearned swagger to his play that will see him perform sublimely one day, then be borderline farcical the next. Fitting then that he should fire them ahead with an absolute screamer. Overhead, dark storm clouds started to gather more quickly than an All Lives Matter plane banner above Turf Moor. Mourinho out trending on Twitter. Kane to Real Madrid confirmed. The stadium boycott lads trying to work on a new form of protest, what with football now being played behind closed doors.
Get that fucking thing out of the way of the telly.
Chirpy, jobless on the street. I mean, surely no club would actually stoop that low to make their mascot unemployed. Anyway, until a hero stepped up. On the big occasions, you need the big players to do their jobs, and to do them well. So thankfully for us, Arsenal had David Luiz at the heart of their defence, who gifted the now fit and firing Heung-min Son with the opportunity of an immediate equaliser, which the South Korean hitman kindly obliged in taking. To coin what is probably the most commonly used turn of phrase by football commentators nowadays, cometh the hour, cometh the man. And that man was Toby Alderweireld. It might not have been a vintage performance, and if there was any game that needed a crowd there to help make the new ground feel more like home, it was this. But a win against the scum is a win against the scum. Do you like Tottenham? Do you like DVDs? Then you'll love Tottenham 2, Arsenal 1. Relive all of the highlights from this epic encounter with added DVD extras. Son celebrating from a car window. Harry Kane's superhero cosplay. Dele and Dyer's alternative commentary. Harry Wink's best halftime bragging to the so-called lesser opposition ahead of being made to eat his words by suffering yet another humiliating loss. All of these and much, much more not available in Tottenham 2, Arsenal 1. But if you are looking for a club that will give you all that, follow Arsenal. We don't even make DVDs anymore. Who the fuck does? Seriously, your banter is as fresh as the air in Sam Allardyce's bog after a post-carvery shite. Now fuck off back to Woolwich, you absolute gaggle of Well, the rest of the season actually went pretty well for Spurs as they remained unbeaten, with one man standing out head and shoulders above the rest. It would appear as though, shock horror, Harry Kane actually wasn't finished. Here's Brother Foynes with a little bit more.
See, Harry Kane's had a half-decent end to the season, which is really confusing, to be honest, because there's these guys on Twitter that are kind of like posting their physics homework to show the reasons why Harry Kane is actually no better than some other sort of mid-table strikers. So I'm just a bit confused, really. I don't really... You look at the numbers that people are posting in these sort of graphs and things that I don't really understand, and I just don't think I'm clever enough to understand. And it's like showing him being compared to Danny Ings and Andre Gray, and I just think, wow, like, they're great strikers. They're brilliant strikers. They're brilliant strikers. I mean, Andre Gray has managed to get 1 goal, I think, in Premier League football in 3 seasons, and you just think, oh God, I wish Harry Kane was that good. I just wish he wasn't injured or, you know, overplayed or whatever else that might have contributed to perhaps a slight dip in form that is completely explainable and doesn't really matter or make any difference to the sort of footballer that he is. And I just think, you know, he scored brilliant goals against Leicester, and he scored against Newcastle, and he scored against West Ham, which is all games in a period that was him sort of getting back to fitness, and you know, he's back in the England team, and he's still England captain. But all of it just, you know, it just doesn't matter. It can't matter, because what I'm seeing is numbers and figures and graphs and colourful patterns that show that he just another Andre Gray. So it's a shame, really. It's a shame that we've sort of seen the best of him, and we're never likely to see anything better from him. Yeah, I can only imagine that Troy Parrott will be first choice next season. You can only imagine. I wonder what his heat map looks like.
So there we have it. The 1920 season, the most seismic in living memory, was at long last done and dusted. Spurs had qualified for the Europa League. Just give it a second. I'm just trying to do this bit, all right? Just come on, be serious, all right? Spurs had qualified for the Europa League. Spurs had qualified for... All right, fuck it. Cut to the musical intermission.
When you're here before, you wouldn't look me in the eye. He talks like a dickhead, even when you're on Sky. He used to float down the left wing with Carl on me right. I was so fucking special. Now he's fucking special. Oh, I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. It's really fucking hurts. Yeah, I spoke to the sun, but I gave you my best years, and just look what I've won. Handed him a notice, transfer was the plan. I'm still fucking special. I should be in Milan, but I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. No. Premier League debut against the score. fucking special. I wish I was special, but I'm a creep. I'm a widow. What the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here. I don't belong here. Ah, fuck it, I'm off to the darts.
I just wish I knew what he was thinking about. He's been so cold and distant lately.
I mean, Jan's been such an incredible servant for us, and he's been denied a proper send-off in front of his own fucking fans by some dog shit virus. 8 years of service. We can't even show our appreciation. 8 years without any memorable fuck-ups. I mean, do you think people even know how rare that is for a Spurs player? Do you think they even know how much rarer that is for a Spurs defender? The guy absolutely oozed class, and he had a special bond with the fans, and to not even get to say goodbye.
Alright, well, night then.
Yeah, night.
Given the small matter of a global pandemic disrupting the 1920 season, its conclusion felt more like something of a weird pre-season tournament. With coronavirus still proving to be a problem for pretty much everybody, despite its best interests, football was not exempt from this. So ahead of the 2021 season, the usual pre-season tour of somewhere deemed to be of commercial interest to the club was not viable. But fear not, where there's the scope for commercial interest, even at the potential cost of footballing embarrassment, you'll often find Tottenham Hotspur. And this summer was no different. For up our sleeves we had an ace, and that ace was all or nothing.
Have you seen this documentary called All or Nothing? Brilliant. It's about a football club that doesn't know what it's fucking doing.
You said that people have perceptions of you. What do they say?
The guy never smiles, the guy is ruthless.
And what's the truth?
The truth is that there is some truth on it.
Just a load of people sitting about arguing every single episode. And like people who are supposed to be in charge of tactics and stuff sitting down with defenders and saying,
It's not after the game, it's during the game.
When the captain's giving the team talk, they're just saying, let's go boys, into these first 5 minutes, let's just fucking do them.
3 points, top 4, and it's a fucking London derby, so let's fucking win this.
Just gets sort of more and more depressing over, I think, 8 episodes, and it starts pretty good, and then we sacked the manager that everyone loved.
Well, I spoke to him last night.
And apparently they knew already, no? Then
No?
no?
The chairman told me, and he said, can I talk? So you're being sacked. You need to pack your things and you leave tonight.
And then we hired this guy who used to manage one of our biggest rivals twice, who'd won the title with them and pretty much said he'd never want to manage us.
Everybody says my name wrong. Everybody calls me Jose. I'm not Jose, I'm Jose.
And then all our best players get injured.
If you go to our squad, no Hugo Lloris, no Harry Kane.
The other good player openly saying that he wants to leave.
No, I just wanted to say that I think it's a good opportunity for me to go to Inter.
Oh yeah, and then the world like pretty much shuts down because there's this virus that's killing everyone.
Coronavirus has led to the cancellation of all football.
But it's pretty good I definitely advise watching it. It's called All or Nothing, which Tottenham Hotspur, All or Nothing. And it's narrated by Tom Hardy. I'm not really too sure why.
That's a lovely, lovely voice.
But we beat Arsenal. It's not all bad.
Well, if you've made it this far, you've got to be a bunch of c***s. Intelligent c***s, not stupid c***s, but bastards in the sense that you want to see how this all plays out, man. The summer break came and went in a flash, with our old school type pre-season fixtures against all English opposition feeling more like a Luke warm-up, if anything. But I suppose it should come as some consolation that in these so-called times, everybody was in the same boat.
First up for us then, in the competitive stakes at least, was Everton, our uncanny bedfellows. More often than not, a fixture contested between two sets of supporters who spend the majority of their time talking about how shite their own team is, rather than the opposition's. Both knowing all too well the pain of being the butt of the joke in the story of our unbearable neighbours, yet still, two teams with glorious yesterdays and big dreams for the future. The Toffees, having recently laid out the blueprint for their own big shiny new stadium, and having appointed one of the greats in Carlo Ancelotti, were at the beginning of their own new chapter. But, wait in line boys, we got here first. Eager to see how new faces Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and Matt Doherty perform within a team that was starting to look revitalised post-lockdown, there was plenty to be excited about, as the Evening Standard's Dan Kilpatrick outlined.
Glorious day here, and it does feel as though Mourinho's tenure really starts today. Finally the clean slate and level playing field he's longed for.
Lazy, tedious, uninspired. But enough about me. Tottenham's start to the season was so bad that alarm bells were ringing immediately. It was going to take something drastic to turn this one around.
Well, at the moment, 7 years after leaving, Gareth Bale is coming back to Spurs.
Could it be? The Welsh wonder, the once prodigal son of Tottenham Hotspur, was on the verge of an unlikely comeback. Having struggled to win over the hearts of the hanky-waving, Franco-fetishising fuckboys at Madrid, what with just the 2 Champions League winning efforts, Spurs fans were ready to welcome him back with a warm embrace.
How are you feeling, Sim?
Time to get excited, lads. It's time to get bloody excited. He's coming home. He's coming home.
As the rumour mill intensified, so too did the endeavour of football Twitter's finest football avatar detectives, analysing cloud patterns and tracking flights, hoping to be one of the very first to catch sight of Gareth Bale as he steps foot on home soil. Here he comes! Bale, 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 Bale. Oh, wait, no, false alarm. No. Oh, wait, I think I see him. Bale, Bale, Bale.
Are you sure you've tracked the right plane?
Bale, Bale, Bale. Although it was now the worst kept secret in football, it seemed to be taking an age for us to actually get the deal done. And if a lifetime of being a Spurs fan has taught me anything, it's that the prospect of a nice thing generally doesn't mean actually getting the nice thing. After a few ropey quotes from Zidane surfaced, as well as Madrid seemingly including Bale on their squad list, the Spurs doubt started to creep in. Had we actually fucked this up? Was the rug about to be pulled yet again? Because that's just what happens to Spurs, isn't it? We dream big and comfort ourselves with our echoes of glory when it all inevitably falls to pieces. But just for once, don't we deserve for our dreams to become a reality? How much longer do we have to dare to do instead of just fucking doing?
Our first time! Forward!
Let's go! Come on! Follow me at
King, Bale, Kane, all back in the first team fold for Tottenham. This is what dreams are made of. Of course there was scorn and cynicism from the outside. Where does he play? Is he fit enough? Can he hack the Premier League anymore? But for the most part, there was joy. And in a miserable period for Spurs and just for everyone in general, there's plenty of room for that. It's also worth noting at this point that he brought along his mate Sergio Reguilon with him as well. A game-changing acquisition in his own right, but this moment belongs to Gareth. Welcome home, lad.
Right. Enough of all the soppy sentimental shit. I've not gone soft, lads. Don't worry. Thanks to Arsenal winning the FA Cup, Mikel Arteta's a Duolingo Tim Sherwood. Spurs are in the arse end of fuck knows where, playing out a shitload of Europa League qualifiers. Let's go over to reputable broadcaster Premier Sports with all the action. The strongest indicator as to quite how tin-pot the early Europa League qualifying stages are is the awful fucking quality of the coverage. I'm pretty sure I've actually seen hostage videos with better production value. But we won. Good. Now, time to put Everton behind us and focus on the new start to our season.
I'm not quite sure how many more times I can talk about Southampton over the course of this, but here we are. Starting much the same as our New Year's Day fixture against the Saints, we found ourselves a goal down relatively early doors, courtesy of a Danny Ings strike. Danny fucking Ings. Spurs have played Southampton over 73 times since the beginning of 2020, and Danny Ings has scored in every single one of them. But, unlike our New Year's Day fixture, we weren't going to dwell on that. Arise, Harry Kane and Heung-min Son. The term masterclass is bandied around all too often, but with the pair combining for all 5 of Tottenham's goals, it's hard to argue in this instance. Son slotting home just the 4 goals, all assisted by Kane, was awarded man of the match, but not everyone seemed to agree with that.
Man of the match, Harry Kane.
Yeah, I'll say that. Well, if it comes from the boss, you can't really argue, can you?
Watch this, Lise. You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half. And now.
Ah, Jose. Never change. Well, maybe change a bit. Worth noting, inconveniently foreshadowing fashion, that Southampton did claw a second goal back in the dying stages, thanks to a more than dubious handball decision given against Matt Doherty. Were it not for the fact that we were 4 goals up at this point, I dare say it would have been a bigger talking point.
You know, perhaps if we were like winning the game by 1 goal and then the exact same thing happened and then we came away from the game with only 1 point instead of all 3. Yeah, imagine how annoying that would be.
Bring on Newcastle at home. Other than the times we seem to thrash them with ease, the Toon Army have always tended to be one of those teams that have managed to frustrate Spurs down the years, and today was no exception. Despite a relatively decent start, with yet another assist for the spent force tap-in merchant Harry Kane laying one on a plate for Lucas Moura, try as we might, Spurs just couldn't find a way through Karl Darlow, now possessed by the spirit of Lev Yashin of course. Newcastle, sensing an opportunity, brought on Andy Carroll for the closing stages and it paid off, capitalising on Eric Dyer being in possession of arms, or whatever the handball rule is now. FA, Premier League, any clarification?
So, we're all agreed. If the player
is judged to have moved his arms during the course of the 90 minutes and has met the ball whilst the wind is blowing in from a south-eastwardly direction as the sun lies behind a partial cloud. And a distant chime of a church bell can be heard. The penalty will be awarded. That or anything that benefits Manchester United.
It's absolutely marvellous there.
Turn camera. 102, take 1. Action, please. Action, Jack, please.
He doesn't do anything?
No, it's a... Sorry, cut. 102, take 2. Action.
Ah, the French midfielders have always been noted for their excellence. There is a Tottenham Hotspur midfielder, inspired by that same French excellence. He's fermented on the bench, and like the best French midfielders, is highly rated. To say that Tanguy Ndombele's first season at Tottenham was a little underwhelming would be putting it fairly lightly. With question marks over his fitness and application, it seemed as though it was all over for him at Spurs as soon as Mourinho stepped through the door and basically started calling him a fat bastard at every possible opportunity. Fast forward a few months, however, and he was a man reborn, playing a pivotal role in Tottenham's midfield with a particularly delicious performance in our Carabao Cup victory over Chelsea, even if it did look like he couldn't be asked to run the length of the pitch to celebrate the winning penalty. So, maybe his fitness still needs a little work, but his improvement was night and day. But quite how we got here will require an explanation from somebody far better equipped to offer one than myself. So I now leave you in the capable hands of tactical analyst Nathan A. Clark for a little more insight on the matter.
The goals are located in the centre and at the ends of a football pitch. That means moving away from your goal and towards theirs up through the middle like this is the most effective movement. Teams have largely cottoned on to this idea, and so they use a mixture of narrow blocking and pressing the player on the ball to defend the centre of the pitch where they don't want the ball to go. Good midfielders can find passes out wide to move the opposition's defence around and create chances to cross the ball, but crossing is only so effective when teams have packed the centre. Great midfielders are the ones who can cut right through the opposition's block. Thanks to his technical skill with the ball at his feet and his willingness to turn with it, Tanguy Ndombele is excellent at maintaining possession of the ball when pressed by opposition players and carrying it up through the field with the ball at his feet in a way that strongly resembles his predecessor and near namesake Moussa Dembele. But where he excels beyond that is with his ability to pass the ball up through these areas too. A lot of that is to do with disguise. Looking one way and then passing the other, appearing slow and then suddenly playing the ball with his weak foot when no one is ready, pretending he doesn't know that he's being closed down from behind, then knocking the ball round that player, turning on the ball when no coach would encourage him to do so when no one is expecting it, and then delicately chipping the ball over the top of the opposition defence.
Oh, let me stop you there, fella. Any danger of a translation for those of us that don't watch football through a calculator, pal?
He's fucking quality, mate.
If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we need to embrace the good times when we see them. And seeing Tanguy Ndombele dance around every other side's midfield is a pretty good time, especially when it involves getting one over Chelsea for once. Moving on to October, and we kicked off the month with our final Europa League qualifier at home to Maccabi Haifa. There was something of an added edge to this game after midfielder Mohamed Abou Fani released a disparaging social media video claiming that Harry Kane would be on his dick.
That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
And in true Harry Kane fashion, he responded in the way he best knows how, by bagging himself a hat-trick in the 7-2 rout of the Israeli club. But whilst nobody who actually watches football would dare doubt Harry's ability, as we'd seen in recent years, Spurs are generally an ankle injury away from a season derailment. Perhaps it was time to solve the whole lack of a viable alternative problem after all.
Ever since the embarrassment of riches of our Keane, Berbatov, Defoe and Bent era, the concept of an actual strike force that isn't just Harry Kane has proved to be something of a problem for Spurs.
Hey guys, my name is Vincent and it's been over 1,000 days since my last Tottenham goal.
So the news that we had signed one of the hottest scoring properties in the Portuguese league was happily, yet cautiously received by some Tottenham fans.
It's really great to have another Brazilian here to help me settle into life in London.
Guys!
It's okay, man. I'm Brazilian. We can speak normally.
Guys!
So, with Spurs squad now looking nicely balanced, it was time to head forth into a packed fixture list. After being patted on the head by Solskjaer following last season's defeat to Manchester United at Old Trafford, the popular narrative would dictate that Mourinho probably held a grudge or some sort of vendetta against Ole, but I'm starting to think Jose might just be a bit misunderstood. If anything, he strikes me as more of a lover than a hater, really.
The joy of 6. Let's get underway with our guide to a great pants-pulling down session. Starting off with the Fernandez, go down immediately and you'll find the spot to get things warmed up nicely. Follow this up with the tantric tangy, sliding one in quickly amidst the early commotion to settle things back down. Adopting the hurricane, a great one for anybody who values giving. Unleash the Korean choir boy to start building momentum. Time to loosen your inhibitions and try something uncharacteristically dirty with an Argentinian face clutching. It may not be one for every occasion, but every now and then it helps to loosen things up ahead of a real pounding finish. Intricately tinker around the box with a series of swift strokes before thrusting it home with a Harry hammer. Switch it up now and employ the smiling song and slide it back in from a tight angle. On the home stretch now, flip into the silky surge to keep the rhythm building towards a crescendo. Now, finish things up with a focus on the spot, ending on another guaranteed pleaser with a second Harry hammer. If by this point you're still clinging on, you've clearly ascended to the level of an Ole, and nobody really knows how much longer you'll last.
With football's return during a pandemic still something of a controversial topic, adding more games to an already packed schedule, courtesy of an international break, was less than welcome news. But amidst a landscape of European Super Leagues, big picture projects, consistently inadequate handling of racist incidents, pay-per-view matches, staff redundancies while star players still take home hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, should we be surprised anymore by the depths that football continues to sink to? What do you think, Spooky?
Modern football, it's a bit shit. But yet, you won't wipe away the stench when you step in it. Hear me out, right? It's love and hate. We love to hate it. And the bits we truly love are the bits that we own. Friends, family, the banter, the singing, the chanting, the limbs and the scenes. That's all ours. The day out, the away day, the pre-match fry-up, the burgers and the beers. In those moments, you don't reference how you got to be stood there. You live that moment. But the smell of exploitation still lingers in the air around you. You drink your IPA and you eat your pie and you choose to ignore it. We have been customer client IDs for more than a generation now. Football fans are replaceable commodities. Clubs know we're paid through the nose for season tickets, taking advantage of our loyalty. These massive global brands that don't even need to be charging us at the rate they do for the privilege of following our own football club. They go ahead and charge the earth, and us mugs, we pay the price. Why? Because of love. Because this to us isn't a service being provided, it's a lifestyle choice, an escapism that is more religious than most Sundays spent at a place of worship. This is our Mecca, our heaven, our hell too. We are there not because of the transport links or the fancy club store. We're there because we're Tottenham. The ground is our conduit for release. It's in our blood. It's what we want. Our love for our football team is their weapon, their emotional blackmail, their anchor to your soul. Football has long been sanitised, but the money spent means the experience is now perceived as entertainment. We expect to enjoy it often with a petulant attitude. Of course, most of us know football doesn't work like a trip to the theatre, and yet some fans are demanding, foot-stamping, spoiled kids with their expectations. But can you blame them? Can you? They've been corrupted by the narrative too. But all of us know the truth. Even the club knows the truth. It doesn't matter that we don't matter. This is £1 billion machine that will still seek to take a pound coin off you if it could find a way. If I walk, if you walk, someone else will take our seat. See, we are just a number, and we won't walk away. We're trapped, stood in the shit, knee deep, because for all the enlightenment and the epiphanies and realisation of what football is now, we still don't care. We don't care about this monolith, this colossus with a global reach to suck money from people without remorse.
Man, I suck your dick.
It's a fix, an addiction, an obsession. If the street price goes up, you still pay it. Even if the buzz is now diluted, you're still chasing the dragon. Sit down, shut up, don't swear, don't sing too loud. The person behind you can't enjoy his hot dog. They've got us. We've got them. We can't escape. We don't want to escape. They don't care because there's a queue waiting for your seat. Modern football. It's a bit shit, but the stench doesn't bother us.
Time to bring the mood back up a bit, I think. Tottenham West Ham. That's always good for a laugh.
With the international break leaving a couple of weeks for reflection after Tottenham's resounding victory over Manchester United, the collective imagination was starting to run wild. Sure, it was early days in an already bizarre season, but 6-1 at Old Trafford was a statement. Yes, I know Villa beat Liverpool 7-2, but that was just an aberration. Speaking of early days, it took just 45 seconds for Kane and Son to combine once again to give Spurs the league. The lead. Getting carried away. Or am I? Harry Kane, man or monster? Either way, he's bringing the pudding, with nutmeg on creamed rice. A thumping finish. 2-0. Right, the rice pudding metaphor was a little hackneyed, but we're all having fun here. And it wasn't stopping there. Son to Reguilon to Kane, 3-0. Just 16 minutes gone. Kane involved in all 3 goals. The rest of the league quaking. Titles on, boys. Titles on. That's it. Bring on Bale for the champagne finish. Let's see him strut his stuff alongside Kane and Son. The front 3 of dreams.
Oh, it's a goal.
Alright, so West Ham got 1 back, but with 82 minutes on the clock, surely it was 2...
Sanchez is headed into his own net.
For fuck's sake, Dav, you got to do better there. Alright, 3-2. But it'll be fine, right? I mean, within the final 5 minutes, Spurs were just trying to keep us on our toes. Or maybe just created that perfect fairy tale finish as Bale broke free, combined with Kane, who fed it back to Bale. 1-on-1 with the keeper. The stars aligned. The hero steps up and fluffed his lines. Despite being denied the picture-perfect 2-goal buffer from Bale, Spurs managed to successfully weather the storm from West Ham into the 94th minute.
It is happening again.
When a skewed attempt at a clearance from Harry Winks on the edge of the box landed at the feet of Manuel Lanzini and oh, you motherfucker. Now let us never speak of that again. A tedious midweek Europa League fixture was followed up by a hard-fought last-ditch win over Burnley, which meant that Spurs were still on track. Now let us never speak of that again. A tedious midweek Europa League fixture was followed up by a hard-fought last-ditch win over Brighton, which meant that Spurs were still on track. Now let us never speak of that again. A tedious midweek Europa League fixture was followed up by a hard-fought last-ditch win over West Brom, which meant that Spurs were still on track. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Although Spurs might have been in a lather rinse repeat cycle of Escher-like proportions, there was one shining light throughout all of this. Harry fucking Kane. Raj mate, do the honours.
What is greatness? Is it leading by example? Is it success in the face of adversity? Is it proving doubters wrong, impressing your will where really it doesn't belong, and all the while hitting new heights, breaking records, and erasing history to create your own? Because if it is, Harry Kane is the closest thing the modern day Tottenham Hotspur have to greatness. You get the impression that he spent the entirety of his ankle injury inhaling each word that was said about him, because despite that, 2020 has been another great year for the, what is it now, 6th season wonder? And it's the year where, echoing sporting greats that have gone before him, Harry Kane seems to have started taking it personally. A single-minded campaign fueled by talk that Tottenham are somehow better without him, that the likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin could take his place for England thanks to 5 good games, and, famously, that he is somehow of the same level as Danny Ings or Andre Gray. This is a man who knows what is being said, is taking offence to it, and is doing something about it in front of our very eyes. Encouraged by a man who has promised to help him explode, and supported by a team who look genuinely aware of how lucky they are to be playing alongside him, 2020 is the year Harry Kane evolved, yet again. He hasn't been reinvented, he hasn't changed position, it's just growth. This is the number 10 that played in the youth system combined with the number 9 of the past few Premier League seasons, just entering his prime, shouldering even more responsibility, and somehow flourishing. His finishing is as unerring as it has ever been, his passing more expressive and expansive. Posting assist numbers at a rate nobody ever has before him, you get the impression that he's just showing off this part of his game because he can, rather than there being any need or deeper meaning behind it. With vision that most midfielders would murder for, a defensive work rate that few actual defenders seek to match, and an underlying hunger to finally have some respect put on his name, this is a generational talent playing at a Ballon d'Or worthy level, and to think any different would be wrong. Harry Kane is a man obsessed with underdog stories, unlikely sources of success, and with a competitive streak that only a few people are wired up with. Tottenham fans are no longer having to consult our history books for glory. In one man, the cult figures of yesterday are being eclipsed, one by one, and superseded by a man who first began his career as a meme. Funnily, the moments you most realise how special Harry Kane is don't always come when he's on the field. Confident and self-assured enough to see no reason to hide his emotions, he will look furious riding the bench in the preliminary round of the Europa League against a team Jedson Fernandez would be the star of, and that is a ruthlessness Tottenham have long lacked. When the book closes on Harry Kane, he will be the greatest goalscorer in the history of the club, yet so much more than that too. This year, more than any other, he has demonstrated his ability to not only be great, but possess the desire to be a truly singular talent. For whatever is to come in 2020, Harry Kane laid the foundations for his and our club's future. It is better to fail aiming high than to succeed aiming low, as the old club saying goes. Nobody is aiming higher than Harry Kane. But if our time with him has taught us anything, it's that boy doesn't like failure much either.
Arise, Sir Harry Kane. As we approach the end of whatever the fuck this is, the fixture gods have provided us with a conveniently dramatic conclusion. With Kane and Son firing on all cylinders, built upon a bedrock of uncharacteristic defensive stability, Spurs surely had every reason to feel confident going into a run of games that would have had even the most unflappable flapping all over the shop.
Let's go! Come on!
For a side largely unfancied at the start of the season, what with their dinosaur of a manager, ropey defence, a midfield lacking any ideas or creativity, and a strike force comprised of a streaky, unreliable bloke and a glass-ankle tap-in merchant, Spurs were quietly making decent headway in the 2021 season. But other than Manchester United, who, even at the best of times, boast a similar consistency to baby shit, it was fair to say that they hadn't really faced anybody that could give us a true indication as to just how good, or not, they might be. So it stood to reason that a run that included Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool and Leicester, all in close succession, should provide ample indication as to what Spurs are right now, albeit within the context of a particularly strange season. In wins over City and the Scum, we caught a glimpse of a Tottenham that were capable of comfortably controlling a game, dictating play by containing their opposition and ruthlessly striking when they needed to. An assured solidity away from home against a Chelsea side packed with attacking intent, especially after a summer of sacking off that whole youth development thing they were much lauded for, and naturally talk of the title crept into the mainstream discourse as much as it did fanfic WhatsApp chats anecdotally hoping that lockdown would be over in time to enjoy the trophy parade. But a week filled with what-ifs and yet another painful loss to Jurgen Klopp and his merry band of grinning arseholes has left Spurs in pretty much the same place as we were at the start of this period, not really knowing how good we actually are. But in truth, isn't that part of the joy of football? I mean, we have access to unlimited on-demand entertainment at the touch of a button or the swipe of a screen, and yet here we keep on coming back to this thing over which we have no real control. No spoilers, no solid idea of how things will play out, capable of destroying weekends, weeks, months even, but also of providing us with some of the highest of highs. In short, maybe we should just try to enjoy it as best we can.
No one's gonna take me home. Get the fuck out my house.